Let me start with a fact that I didn't expect to find buried in a 1996 video game, and it's one of those pieces of development trivia that makes the whole era feel slightly warmer when you know it. The level skip cheat code for the PC version of the original Tomb Raider was confirmed by Gavin Rumory himself to be based on the movie The Wizard of Oz. Specifically, the idea came from Dorothy going home by clicking her heels together and spinning around, and the cheat code physically mimics that same motion. Lara spins in a specific sequence, like she's doing Dorothy's little ritual, and the game responds by skipping the level. Nobody tells you that when you're a kid in 1997 frantically trying to get past the T-Rex. I mean, most of us weren't even born yet, but even when we played it in the early 2000s, you just use the code and move on, completely unaware that someone at Core Design buried a tiny Judy Garland tribute inside the game's cheat architecture. Rumory discussed this at the Tomb Raider 25th anniversary panel at Derby Quad, and I think it deserves significantly more attention than it gets. What it reveals is that the people making this game were not just building mechanics and filling space, as they were leaving small messages, jokes, and references inside the game's own systems, in places that most players would never think to look for meaning. The cheat code works metaphorically and literally. If you know what it's based on, it turns every use of it into a miniature tribute to the Wizard of Oz. That layering of meaning into something as mundane as a cheat code is what the best Easter eggs in this franchise have always been about. It's also a reminder that the people at Core Design in 1996 were not simply shipping a product, they were leaving traces of themselves inside it. Beautiful. This might be my favorite development story in the entire Tomb Raider franchise, and this is also in Tomb Raider 1996. Toby Gard, the man who created Lara Croft, who designed her, who built the character from the ground up, added her handstand animation to the original game without telling a single other person on the development team. He put it in the game, let the build go out for testing, and said absolutely nothing. His intention was to wait and see if the testers found it on their own during their normal playthrough sessions. They did. And according to Neil Boyd, the reaction was exactly what Gard was hoping for. Boyd recalled it like this: "We were testing every day, then somebody went, 'I didn't know that was in the game. Why didn't you tell us?' And Gard's explanation was perfectly, completely Toby Gard. He wanted to see if they could come across it naturally. Boyd described it as Gard always going that extra bit further rather than simply finishing something and moving on to the next task. He would add something else. Something that was not required, that nobody had asked for, and then he would wait around like a menace. The handstand has no gameplay function. It doesn't open any doors, it doesn't affect any puzzles. It contributes precisely nothing to Lara's ability to raid tombs. It's just there, tucked away in her animation library, a small gift for anyone who presses the right combination of buttons at the right time. I mean, it looks cool. There it is. So, by that philosophy, putting something in for the sheer delight of it rather than for any functional reason is exactly what a great Easter egg is at its best. And the fact that it came from Lara's creator, who could not resist hiding things in his own game just to watch people discover them, says everything about the creative spirit that gave this franchise its character from day one. Also, did you know that if you leave a comment down below, I'll do my own little handstand? And hey, if you like and subscribe, there may even be a Lara Croft waiting for you in your dreams tonight. Just a thought. If you had the original Tomb Raider disc in the 90s and you put it into a regular CD player rather than a console or a PC, you could listen to the game's music through your stereo. This was a feature of that era of game publishing. The audio tracks were burned onto the disc in standard CD audio format, accessible to any device that could read a CD. Most Tomb Raider fans who were around then know this. What most of them don't know is that track 56 on the disc is not Tomb Raider music at all. The audio on track 56 references the year 1999, a helicopter, and a firestorm. It's an unused audio track from Thunderhawk 2 Firestorm, an entirely separate Core Design game from the same development period that had nothing to do with Lara Croft or archaeology or Atlantis. It somehow ended up embedded on the Tomb Raider disc, sitting there unbothered and unknown on millions of copies of the game for years before anyone figured out what it actually was. The person who eventually tracked it down and explained its origin was Stereopanic, posting on the Tomb Raider forums, and the explanation is documented in the Tomb Raider Art Encyclopedia wiki. What a legend. Think about the specific strangeness of that. An audio track from a completely different game about a helicopter and a firestorm in 1999, according to its own content, spent years riding undetected on the disc of one of the most famous video games ever made, unidentified. Core design in the mid-1990s was operating like Sam Fisher from the Splinter Cell games. And honestly, they were working at a pace and with a creative energy that occasionally resulted in things ending up where they had no business being. A stray audio track from Thunderhawk 2 hitching a ride on the Tomb Raider disc is exactly the kind of chaotic, accidental, completely undignified Easter egg that you could only get from that specific era of game development. Nobody planned it, nobody caught it before shipping. It just exists on millions of discs, waiting for someone curious enough to put a video game into a CD player and listen to track 56. The strangeness and chaos of that, an artifact of a completely different production embedded permanently in one of the most iconic games ever published, is a kind of accidental archaeology that the Tomb Raider community is uniquely well-paced to appreciate. Every single person who has played the original Tomb Raider remembers that medi pack. You know the one. Sitting on a pillar, slightly off to one side, completely visible, totally unreachable by any normal means. It just sits there, taunting. The game sees you looking at it. It doesn't care. If you've ever spent any time trying to reach it, and every player has, whether they admit it or not, you might feel some complicated emotions learning that it was put there deliberately as a joke. The developers left it there specifically to wind players up. Full stop. That was the intention, and it's very annoying. There are two competing accounts of its origin. One says there was originally a secret route to retrieve it, a hidden path that would have let you claim the medipack if you were clever enough, but that route was removed before the game shipped, leaving the medipack stranded up there permanently with no way to reach it. The other account is more brutal. It was always a prank. The secret route story is revisionist, and there was never any intention of letting you have it. The wiki acknowledges both versions without fully resolving which is true. Either way, the medipack sits on that pillar in the final game, unobtainable, visible from the moment you enter the area, doing nothing except making you feel slightly inadequate. And the fact that it became a long-running inside joke within the core design development team makes it even better. They knew what they had done, and they left it there anyway. A small, mean, perfectly calibrated piece of development humor that has outlasted the hardware it was built on and is still being discussed almost 30 years later. I think that qualifies as a success. Dare I say, great success. The developers of the original 1996 game made no secret of the fact that the Indiana Jones films were among the primary inspirations behind Tomb Raider. They acknowledged it openly, as they should. And the most direct tribute to those films is sitting in the main hall of Croft Manor in the very first game. An actual Ark of the Covenant. Just there, on display, uncovered. Cool. As if Lara Croft wandered into a 1930s government warehouse sometime between adventures and helped herself to the single most dangerous artifact in human history, then brought it home and put it in the hallway. There's something really funny about the confidence of that decision. Not a vague homage, not a subtle environmental nod. The Ark of the Covenant specifically, identifiably sitting in Croft Manor where you can walk up and look at it. Lara apparently retrieved it at some point, and the game's world simply accepted this as consistent with her character, which it honestly is. If anyone was going to have the Ark of the Covenant in their house, it would very well be Lara Croft. The fact that it disappears from Tomb Raider Anniversary, the 2007 remake of the original game, is chalked up to potential copyright issues, unfortunately. At some point between 1996 and 2007, someone's legal team, aka the lamest people, noticed what core design had done and had a pointed conversation about it. As the Tomb Raider Horizons article puts it, Dr. Jones must have access to some good lawyers. That is a great line, and I'm choosing to believe that is exactly how it went. Some IP attorney, reviewing the Anniversary remake, opened a document and wrote a note that ended the Ark of the Covenant's 11-year tenure in Lara Croft's front hall. This is a small one, easy to miss if you're not deliberately looking for it. But it's this kind of detail that makes the original Tomb Raider feel like it was built by people who cared about the texture of the world they were creating, rather than just the mechanics of completing a level. Did you know, as you progress through the game, more stamps appear in Lara's passport? Her travel document updates to reflect where she's been. In all fairness, it isn't something the game draws your attention to. If you just notice and look closely, Lara's passport is accumulating the visual evidence of her adventures. In the context of a 1996 video game, adding this kind of lived-in environmental detail is just amazing. It rewards only the players who are curious enough to check and observant enough to notice the change. The passport stamps are a tiny piece of world building that says, Lara Croft has been places, her travel document proves it, and we kept track. That specific kind of attention to detail is what separates games that feel like worlds from games that feel like sequences of levels, and the original Tomb Raider was doing it in 1996. Heck yeah. The city of Kharmoon, one of the Egyptian levels in the original game, has a name that most people encounter, accept, move on from, and never think about again. It sounds vaguely Egyptian and mysterious, which is exactly what you want from a level set in ancient ruins. What it actually is a deliberate abbreviation of Tutankhamun. The developers took Tutankhamun, dropped the Tuten from the front, kept Khamun, changed the spelling slightly to get Kharmoon, and used it as the level name. The resulting word sounds like it might have something to do with the moon, given the moon at the end, but it doesn't. It's entirely a Tutankhamun reference, also known as King Tut, who wasn't just in the movie Night at the Museum, Secret of the Tomb, but was also a pharaoh in real life. So, the Tomb Raider Art Encyclopedia Wiki notes that the developers felt City of Tut was too obvious and too cheap as a level name, and I think they were absolutely right. Kharmoon sounds like a real place, doesn't it? It sounds ancient and specific and slightly dangerous, the way good fictional archaeology location names should sound. City of Tut sounds like a gift shop at Cairo International Airport. The choice to build the name from the end of Tutankhamun rather than from the front is a small piece of creative problem solving that resulted in a better level name than anything more obvious would have produced. There's also a hidden message on the walls of Kharmoon written in hieroglyphics, with a line ending in a smiley face. The hieroglyphics above and below it are apparently nonsense, decoration with no meaning, but someone took the time to end the real line with a smiley. That's just the original Tomb Raider in one image. The Atlantis levels in the original Tomb Raider have a strange, organic, fleshy quality that feels very unsettling in a way that most environments in early 3D games simply do not. Walking through them produces a specific kind of discomfort that's hard to articulate when you're playing, something biological and interior about the space, something that your brain registers as wrong without being able to explain why. There's a very good reason for that. According to the developers, level artist Heather Gibson did not have time to create dedicated textures for the Atlantis levels from scratch. Programmer Gavin Rumery arrived one day with a human anatomy book, the kind used by medical professionals, and used pages from it as source material for the textures applied to the walls and floors of those sections. Real anatomical illustrations, real depictions of human tissue and body structure, applied to the surfaces of a lost civilization buried beneath the ocean. Pretty cool and weird. So the result is a set of levels that feel viscerally wrong in the most effective possible way. Your brain is looking at something it recognizes as biological and interior, as tissue rather than stone, and it doesn't know what to make of that in context of a video game environment. The unsettling quality of the Atlantis levels is not accidental, as it's not the work of janky old graphics. It's the direct result of a creative team under time pressure making a lateral decision to use the most disturbing or the most realistic texture source they had available, which happened to be a medical textbook. That's the genius of the original Tomb Raider. A small team, significant constraints, and enough creative energy to turn game levels into something so oddly memorable. Chaotic atmosphere sure did set the tone for me replaying this game a few years back. This fact lives somewhere between an Easter egg and a punishment, and the ambiguity about which it was intended to be is part of what makes it so good. So it lives in my head rent-free as well. In the original Tomb Raider, there was a specific level skip cheat code, as I told you guys. If you then loaded up Tomb Raider 2, which had its own level skip code, and entered the Tomb Raider 1 version anyway, what happened was not a level skip. Lara Croft exploded. Yeah, she actually blew up right there on screen in a small shower of thoroughly undignified digital destruction. The game processed your old code, decided it recognized what you were attempting, and responded by killing you in the most emphatic way available. How charming. Whether this was a deliberate joke built in by the core design team or a happy accident of how the game handled unrecognized cheat input is something that fans have debated for years. The result is so perfectly timed, so specifically punitive, and so funny that it's hard to believe it was fully accidental. The Tomb Raider Horizons article covers it with the line, "Pull yourself together, woman," which is exactly the right response. There's a specific kind of developer humor in building a consequence this extreme for something as minor as using the wrong cheat code. It says, "We know you're trying to skip our game. Nope, not again, fellas." Boom. Goodbye, Lara. The encounter with the T-Rex in TR1's Lost Valley is one of the most iconic moments in gaming history. Full stop, no exaggeration. A fully rendered, moving, snarling dinosaur appearing in a 1996 game and chasing you through an ancient valley was jaw-dropping for its time, and it remains one of the clearest examples of a game creating pure spectacle through environmental design rather than cutscene. Toby Gard originally created and pitched the T-Rex in an early demo version of the game, and it became one of Tomb Raider 1's most defining sequences. So when core design sat down to make TR2, the question of what to do about the T-Rex must have come up. Their answer was, put a secret valley containing not one, but two T-Rexes inside the opening level, the Great Wall of China. Not referenced in the level briefing, not hinted at by any other environmental elements in the area. Just a valley, accessible if you knew where to look or were willing to explore, containing two prehistoric apex predators with no business being in medieval China. Why not? It was Tomb Raider 2, a great sequel in 1997, and it could. Tomb Raider Horizons describes stumbling on this valley before the era of comprehensive online walkthroughs as feeling like an astonishing achievement, and that captures it exactly. Finding the T-Rex Valley in TR2 without help meant you turned a corner, walked through what seemed like a dead end, and discovered that the sequel had discreetly tucked away two of the previous game's most unforgettable enemies in a corner of its opening level. High risk, yet no reward beyond the encounter itself. Tomb Raider 3's high security compound level has a set of movable crates blocking Lara's access to the first secret in the area. If you look at those crates, specifically at the markings on them rather than treating them as generic level props, they say MJ12. That stands for Majestic 12, the alleged codename for a secret committee supposedly established by US President Harry Truman in 1947 to recover and investigate alien spacecraft. Majestic 12 was one of the central conspiracy theories of the 1990s, the X-Files era, the exact cultural moment in which this game was developed and released, and core design embedded a reference to it on the most nondescript prop in the level. You have to be looking at the texture of a crate during a puzzle to see it. It doesn't affect gameplay, nor does it unlock anything. To be fair, it's simply there for the conspiracy-minded player who bothers to read the label on a box while navigating a government facility level. The Tomb Raider Horizons article notes that the Majestic 12 documents were later revealed to be elaborate hoaxes. The alleged government papers were fabricated. The whole thing was a fraud. But none of that affects the Easter egg. I mean, I just had to share this with you guys. It's an obnoxious one. What matters is that in 1998, someone at Core Design thought it would be funny to put an alien conspiracy reference on a crate in a video game about a woman looting ancient sites for treasure. And all I can say is, you got us, pal. We got pranked. Finding your way into the secret treasure room at Croft Manor on Tomb Raider 3 requires locating all of the level's secrets, which makes it a discovery reserved for the genuinely dedicated. The room itself is worth the effort. It contains Lara's private collection of artifacts from her previous adventures, including the Atlantean Scion from TR1, the Dagger of Shan from TR2, and a T-Rex head mounted on the wall, which is either a trophy or a pet that had a very bad day. But the item that generates the most discussion is a golden idol sitting among the collection that looks remarkably similar to the Chachapoyan fertility idol that Indiana Jones was hunting for in the opening sequence of Raiders of the Lost Ark from 1981. The Tomb Raider Horizons article acknowledges that whether this is a genuine Indy reference is open for debate, while making clear which side of the debate they're personally on. Given that the same franchise has the Ark of the Covenant in TR1's Croft Manor, Indiana Jones' skeleton in TR3, Indy's hat and whip on a rolling boulder in Anniversary, and assorted references to Angkor Wat and the franchise's adventuring DNA throughout, a golden idol sitting in Lara's trophy room feels entirely in keeping. Core Design loved Indiana Jones, they weren't hiding it, and Lara having the thing Indy was looking for in her private collection is precisely the kind of understated power move that suits her character. Indiana Jones references in Tomb Raider games are persistent, loving, and occasionally repetitive, and Tomb Raider 4's version is the most directly confrontational of them all. If you explore the ruins of Angkor Wat in The Last Revelation carefully enough, you will find a skeleton lying between some spikes. Next to the skeleton are a hat and a whip, a fedora, Indiana Jones's fedora, and his whip. Dr. Jones apparently reached Angkor Wat at some point before Lara encountered the spiked corridor that you navigate just fine with standard Lara maneuverability and did not survive it. Lara subsequently walked past his remains on her way to completing the level without slowing down. The Tomb Raider Horizons article puts it elegantly. It looks like Miss Croft had the last laugh. And that's exactly the energy of this Easter egg. It's not just a tribute to Indiana Jones. It's a gentle statement about Lara Croft's place in the adventurer-archaeologist hierarchy. The man who inspired the whole genre is dead in a spike trap. Lara stepped over him. She's the one still going. There's something deeply satisfying about a franchise that spent years being compared to Indiana Jones slipping his skeleton into a level and letting Lara step past it without a word. The confidence of that choice is enormous. The specific choice of Angkor Wat as the location for Indy's remains is also worth noting. Angkor Wat is exactly the kind of ancient, mysterious, architecturally spectacular location that the Indiana Jones films would use as a set piece. It's Indy's kind of place. Perhaps he would have been here. The fact that he was here and didn't make it out is the joke, and the joke only works given how perfectly suited the location is to him, so that his presence there is entirely believable. This one requires a text editor and either an excess of curiosity or an excess of free time. Lucky for you, I've got both. And also the result is worth it. If you open the Tomb Raider 4 executable file with a text editor and locate the section marked The Last Revelation, you will find a personal message embedded in the binary by programmer Richard Flower. The message is addressed to his fiancée Jay, for putting up with the game taking over their lives, to his stepsons Craig, Jamie and Aiden with a specific note telling them to show this discovery to their mates at school, they would believe them, and to his daughters Sophie and Jodie. The message ends with the line, "See you in another hex dump." Everything about this is just remarkable. The act of writing a love letter to your family inside the binary of a video game. The specific detail of addressing the stepsons and telling them to use it to impress their friends at school, which is both a completely human impulse and an acknowledgement that finding a hidden message in a game's executable is exactly the kind of thing that a kid in 1999 would brag about. And then "see you in another hex dump" as the sign-off, which is both the most programmer-coded goodbye imaginable and tender in context. Richard Flower was telling his family he would be back for them after the code was done. The reader Kevin on the Tomb Raider Horizons comment section is the person who surfaced this specific detail for the article's audience, noting that he found the message by opening the executable himself. This kind of collaborative fan archaeology, someone going back to a 1999 game's binary and reading it carefully enough to find a programmer's personal note, is one of the reasons the Tomb Raider community has maintained such a rich archive of knowledge about these games. I hope Richard Flower's family eventually found out about this, and I hope the stepsons got some good mileage out of it at school. Now talking about Tomb Raider Legend, which was Crystal Dynamics' first game with the franchise after they took over from Core Design, and it's the rebooted version that restored many of the series' classic elements while modernizing the gameplay. The England level contains a sequence in the King's Crypt, and if you look very carefully at the inscriptions on the columns, on the stonework above the archways, and on the rubble near Sir Bedvere's tomb, you will find the phrase "Crystal Dynamics Rules" carved into the ancient masonry. In some places, it's mirrored. In some places, letters are obscured or incomplete, but the message repeats on multiple surfaces throughout the level for anyone who takes the time to look, and you will likely need the in-game binoculars to read it clearly in some sections. The specific confidence required to carve your studio's name into the walls of a 16th century Arthurian crypt in your first major release with a beloved franchise is something I find extremely amusing. Crystal Dynamics had just inherited the keys to one of the most important gaming properties on the planet, And the first thing they did with the stonework of their King Arthur level was use it to declare, in the tradition of ancient runic inscriptions, that they rule. The fact that you need binoculars to read it adds an extra layer of charm. It's arrogance with discretion. They said it loudly, yet with perfect stealth. In Tomb Raider Legends Peru level, there's a football lying around near a market stall. If you find it, use the interact button to kick it, and manage to aim it through the makeshift goal that's marked by flags hanging over a gap in the fence, you will hear an imaginary crowd of spectators erupting in celebration for Lara. It requires you to have noticed the ball and messing with it to realize it was interactive, and then eyes on the prize, that there was a goal nearby to aim for. And the payoff is a crowd cheer for a goal that exists in a video game level about ancient Peruvian tombs. Nobody had to build this, but this was surely cool. Somebody at Crystal Dynamics, working on the Peru level of Tomb Raider Legend, decided that there would be a football, that it would be kickable, that there should be a goal, and that scoring should trigger an imaginary crowd reaction. And then they built all of that into a game that's primarily about climbing ruins and fighting enemies and uncovering ancient mysteries. The Tomb Raider Horizons article marks it with "Goal," which is exactly the appropriate response and also the name of the trophy when you do this on a PlayStation 4 or 5. This is the kind of Easter egg that tells you something good about the people making the game, and it makes you feel good too, fellow FIFA players or fans, doesn't it? When players spotted crates in the Bolivia Redux level of Tomb Raider Legend marked with Natla Industries, it generated significant discussion and speculation in the Tomb Raider community. Natla, the main villain of the original 1996 game, a disgraced Atlantean queen with a very specific brand of world-ending ambition, had not appeared or been referenced in over a decade. Her company's name on a crate in a modern set Bolivia level was either a throwaway reference or something more deliberate. At the time, nobody knew. Nobody outside Crystal Dynamics knew that the team was almost finished with a full remake of the original Tomb Raider, and nobody knew that Natla would later be resurrected as the central antagonist of Tomb Raider Underworld. The Natla Industries crates were not just a throwaway reference. They were carefully planted, knowing exactly that they were setting up across the next 2 games in the franchise. The players who spotted them and brought them to the community's attention had nothing to work with except the knowledge that Natla Industries was a name from the 1996 game and that it was now appearing on boxes in a level of a 2006 game. The gap between seeing the reference and understanding what it meant would only close when Anniversary launched and then when Underworld launched, at which point the crates retroactively became something much more significant than a bit of texture dressing. This is the best kind of planted Easter egg, the kind that functions as evidence of long-range planning. Crystal Dynamics put those crates in Bolivia Redux, knowing exactly what story they were beginning to tell. The fans who noticed them were not wrong to be excited, as they were detecting something real. The excitement was justified. It just had to wait for 2 more games before it could be fully explained. In Croft Manor, in both Tomb Raider Legend and Anniversary, there's a portrait hanging on the wall to the right of the stairs leading to the upper floor. The portrait depicts Kain, the protagonist of Crystal Dynamics' Legacy of Kain series, in his human form, before he was turned into a vampire. The detail carries weight, as the Legacy of Kain narrative begins with Kain as a human nobleman who was murdered and resurrected as a vampire, and the portrait shows him before the transformation. It's Kain as he would have looked to the people who knew him before his story began, which is a specific kind of historical artifact within the Legacy of Kain fiction itself. The presence of a human Kain portrait in Lara Croft's home raises real questions about what that painting means with the world of the games. Lara is an archaeologist and collector with eclectic tastes. She has the Ark of the Covenant, a T-Rex head, and an Indiana Jones idol. A portrait of a man who turns out to be a vampire fits that collection better than it has any right to. The books in Croft Manor and Anniversary contain passages that Lara reads aloud as you interact with them. And among the content is those passages are references to the Maria Doria and the Dagger of Shan, both of which are central MacGuffins from Tomb Raider 2 but have no connection to the Anniversary storyline or the TR1 events it's retelling. These references are there because the books in Lara's library contain the history of the world she moves through, including locations and artifacts that she has yet to encounter in the story being told. The Tomb Raider Horizons article acknowledges that these might not technically qualify as Easter eggs in the strictest sense. They're more like continuity nods embedded in the environmental storytelling, while making clear they land with the warmth of a genuine wink from the development team, regardless of the technical classification. Lara reading about the Maria Doria and the Dagger of Shan from books in her own library implies a version of the Tomb Raider world where these objects exist as documented historical and archaeological subjects, not just as game-level objectives. That adds depth to the fiction beyond what the game itself requires. This is one of those stories that genuinely shouldn't be real, but it is. When the Turning Point debut trailer for Tomb Raider 2013 was released in 2011, a map stuck to the rocks on a shipwrecked beach was supposed to be the visual anchor of the scene, a deliberate clue to the game's coastal Japan setting. I guess that was the intention. What the community actually noticed was a small red crab crawling on the rocks in the background. It was incidental environmental decoration. It had no name, no significance, no purpose except to make the beach feel inhabited. The community named it Fifi, for reasons that nobody has ever fully explained. They just collectively decided that this background crab in a pre-release trailer had a name, and the name was Fifi, and that was now the established truth. Crystal Dynamics saw what had happened. Rather than ignoring it, they incorporated Fifi into the final game and created a bronze achievement called Crab Cakes that you unlock by shooting a crab on Shipwreck Beach, which means that Tomb Raider 2013's official completion record includes an achievement awarded for murdering a fan-named crab that only came to exist after someone spotted it in a background detail of a trailer over a year before the game launched. They saw Fifi and they made Fifi real. Then they gave you an achievement for killing it. Sorry, Fifi. You meant a lot to the community, and the achievement named after you stands as permanent evidence that Crystal Dynamics was paying attention to the people playing their games long before those people had even started playing them. This might be the purest example of genuine fan-developer collaboration in the Tomb Raider franchise's history. The official Tomb Raider website cites Fifi as one of the 6 Easter eggs worth highlighting from the Survivor trilogy. She earns that. For a background crab, she had a remarkable run. Press F to pay respect to Fifi. If you actually pressed F on a PC right now, the video is not in full screen now, is it? At a certain point in the 2013 game, Lara makes her way back out to the wreckage of the Endurance off the coast and explores what remains of her cabin. The cabin, at this stage of the game, is emotionally loaded. It's what's left of where Lara lived before everything fell apart, and the contrast between the cozy familiarity of the space and the chaos surrounding it is one of the more effective moments in the game's tone. If you stop exploring long enough to look carefully at the room, you will notice a stuffed octopus tucked in among the debris. That is Underpus. Specifically, it's a plushie version of the Kraken from Tomb Raider Underworld, which the fan community had collectively nicknamed Underpus, with the same affectionate impulse that produced Fifi the Crab. The Endurance cabin in the 2013 game is about the last place you would expect to find a stuffed sea monster from a 2008 action title, which makes finding it there exactly the kind of discovery that rewards the player who slows down during the softer moments. Crystal Dynamics put a fan community in-joke in the most personal space available in the game, in a moment of relative stillness amid sustained tension. The Underpus plushie is what Lara Croft, professional Tomb Raider, keeps in her cabin for comfort. I choose to treat that as fully canonical. Finding a secret triggered a specific distinctive chime, a brief musical sting that told you, with satisfying and immediate certainty, that you had found something hidden. That sound is deeply embedded in the memory of anyone who played those games. It became one of those audio signatures that a franchise accumulates over time, a sound that belongs to a specific series the way a theme song belongs to a specific show. When the 2013 reboot launched with a completely different audio design and a completely different game structure, the classic secret chime was not part of it. I mean, that made sense. It was a different game after all. But if you collect all of the GPS caches scattered across Yamatai, every single one, the classic secret chime from the core design games plays as a reward, and Lara says, "Aha, there's a note inside." The Tomb Raider Horizons article describes this as almost bringing a tear to the eye, coming from a writer who openly admits they're not a massive fan of the 2013 reboot. That reaction is indeed significant. The classic secret chime is so specifically weighted with franchise history that hearing it in a completely different kind of Tomb Raider game after a lengthy collectible hunt landed with a real emotional impact for players who carried that sound from the core design era. Respecting a legacy in a reboot does not mean forcing callbacks into the main narrative or populating the new setting with old characters, as it means hiding something specifically and deeply meaningful to longtime fans at the end of an optional task, accessible only to players committed enough to complete it. We know what this sound means to you guys, so we put it in here for you. The optional Tomb of the Lost Adventurer DLC for Tomb Raider 2013 contains a plane that is recognizably the Nigerian aircraft from the TV show Lost. The same aircraft that famously crashed on the island in that series, specifically the one carrying heroine statues of the Virgin Mary that served as a major plot point, turns up inside an optional challenge tomb in Yamatai. It's just chilling there, inside the tomb, as if it's the most natural thing in the world for a mysterious island off the coast of Japan to also contain wreckage from a Nigerian drug smuggling operation that was a key plot element in a TV show that ran from 2004 to 2010. The Lost reference is well documented in the Steam community guides for the game. Given that both Tomb Raider 2013 and Lost are built around the premise of people stranded on a mysterious island surrounded by supernatural forces, I guess the connection is thematically appropriate even if the execution is weird. But fans of the show must love it. I don't know. I never watched it. Yikes. At several points in Rise of the Tomb Raider, Lara tries to do something and can't manage it, and says, "I'm not strong enough." This is a deliberate reference to Tomb Raider: The Angel of Darkness, the 2003 PlayStation 2 game that was received with a mix of ambivalence and outright frustration from the fanbase when it launched. In Angel of Darkness, Lara would say this exact phrase whenever she encountered tasks that required a level of strength she had not yet developed. The game had a rudimentary progression system where certain actions were gated behind attribute improvements, and the line became associated with that friction. "I'm not strong enough" became shorthand for a particular kind of player exasperation. Including the line in Rise of the Tomb Raider is a choice that functions on multiple levels simultaneously. For players who don't know Angel of Darkness, it's simply Lara acknowledging a physical limitation in a realistic way. For fans who remember the core design era, it's a wink at a specific piece of franchise history that the Survivor trilogy does not otherwise reference. The Tomb Raider Horizons article calls it a nod to the divisive Angel of Darkness, and divisive is exactly right. The game has defenders now, a community of people who appreciate its ambition and its tonal darkness even while acknowledging its execution problems. By including that line, Rise absorbed Angel of Darkness into Lara's history without pretending it was an uncomplicated success. That's an honest way to handle a complicated or, speaking frankly, an annoying part of a franchise's past. The Underpus plushie from the 2013 game did not retire after Lara got off Yamatai. In Rise of the Tomb Raider, if you look under the bed in one of the bungalows near the copper mill base camp in Siberia, you'll find a familiar purple plushie. Underpus is back. He's apparently followed Lara from a shipwrecked island in the Pacific to a former Soviet gulag in Russia, which raises significant questions about his motivations and his logistics, but no questions about his dedication. And then, separate from the underbed appearance, ex-user Alchama found an entire hidden Underpus cavern in the abandoned mines area. A room, accessible using a super jump enabled through a PC trainer, jumping to a height the game's normal mechanics do not permit, filled with multiple Underpus plushies. An entire gathering of them. A secret space that exists in the game's geometry but that the game never intended for you to reach by normal means. Stuffed full of stuffed octopi who carry a fan community nickname from a franchise entry that came out 7 years before this game. Whether the Underpus Cavern was intended as a genuine Easter egg for players to find through creative means, or whether it was a developer-only joke that was never supposed to be accessible, is a question that has not been definitively answered. But it's clearly established that it exists in the game's space, that a dedicated player found it through unconventional means, and that finding an entire secret room filled with plushie octopi named by a fan community is exactly the kind of discovery that makes people love game franchises. The Tomb Raider Horizons article credits ex-user Stella Loon for the underbed version and Alchama for the cavern discovery, two separate finds by two legends, both pointing to the same inexhaustible Underpus. In the former Soviet gulag setting of Rise's Siberian section, Lara can find a set of shaped game pieces that are immediately recognizable as Tetris blocks. In Russia. In a game level set in Siberia, at a Soviet-era forced labor facility. The Tetris reference in a Soviet context is both the most obvious possible cultural Easter egg and somehow still completely charming for how it's deployed, just chilling there in the gulag environment for anyone who looks carefully at the details of the space rather than pushing straight through it. The cultural logic of Tetris being in this space is slightly more interesting. Did you know Tetris was created in 1984 by Soviet mathematician and game designer Alexei Pajitnov? Yeah, it was developed at the Academy of Sciences in Moscow and became one of the most exported and widely played games in history. The pieces existing in a Soviet-era Siberian setting have a kind of historical legitimacy that a purely comedic reference would not. These shaped blocks belong in this period, in this geography, in the way that any cultural artifact belongs to its time and place. The Tomb Raider Horizons article calls them a personal favourite among Rise's Easter eggs, and I think that is the right call. If you return to the Prophet's Tomb in Syria and Rise of the Tomb Raider after acquiring the grapple hook, you can climb up to a chamber directly above the Syrian tomb base camp. You will find the Soul Reaver sword hanging on the wall. The Soul Reaver is the signature weapon of the Legacy of Kain series, one of Crystal Dynamics' other major creative properties, and its appearance in a Tomb Raider game tucked away in a hard-to-reach area of a Syria level is an understated studio self-reference that rewards the most committed explorers. The Soul Reaver appearing in Lara's adventure says something about how Crystal Dynamics thought about their catalogue of properties, not as entirely separate universes with no awareness of each other, but as creative work from the same studio that could acknowledge itself across titles. The Kain portrait in Croft Manor, the Soul Reaver in Syria, these are testaments that a studio says to the players who know their work broadly rather than just narrowly, and we see you. We know you know who we are beyond this one franchise. The Tomb Raider Horizons article was convinced to add it to the list by readers who felt it deserved recognition, which is itself a nice example of the community expanding the canon of what counts as worth knowing. At the end of Rise of the Tomb Raider, the camera sweeps across Lara's study desk, which is covered in Trinity-related research materials, maps, photographs, recordings, and drawings. Among the photographs on that desk is an ID photo of a man named Kennard Montes. If you have only played the games, this name means nothing. Kennard Montes does not appear in Rise. He's not a character in Tomb Raider 2013, but he exists in one place: Tomb Raider: The 10,000 Immortals, a canonical tie-in novel set between the 2013 game and Rise, in which Lara hunts the Golden Fleece and has a confrontation with Kennard, a Trinity agent at Oxford University from which he narrowly escapes. The photo on the desk is the official Tomb Raider website's own example of a notable Survivor Trilogy Easter egg, and it's a smart one for sure. If I'm being honest, it rewards a very small percentage of players, those who played Rise and also read the novel. For that group, Kennard's photo on the desk is confirmation that the story they read was real, that the confrontation at Oxford happened within the game's fiction, and that Lara is still tracking the Trinity agent who got away. For everyone else, it's a photograph of a stranger pinned on an evidence board. Entirely unremarkable. The two-layer reading, meaningful to few, invisible to many, is what a canon Easter egg should be. Did you know that Lara Croft's canonical birthday in the Survivor Trilogy is February 14th? Yeah, Valentine's Day. Whether this was a deliberate choice or a coincidence that became fixed as canon is not something the developers have explained, but the date has been established and built into the games in a very specific way. If you boot up Rise of the Tomb Raider or Shadow of the Tomb Raider on February 14th, the loading screens will acknowledge it. Happy birthday, Lara, one day per year, the game reaches through the loading screen and marks the occasion. The game is aligned with the calendar of your PC or console. It knows what day it is and uses that knowledge to celebrate its protagonist's birthday while you wait for a level to load. There's something I find charming about this that goes beyond the novelty of it. Most seasonal video games just show hints and in-game lore stuff while the game's loading up. The birthday loading screen is none of those things. It's just a text change on a loading screen, visible only to the player who happens to be playing on that specific day, and it is rare if you ask me. The Blood Ties DLC for Rise of the Tomb Raider is one of the most thoroughly Easter egg-laden pieces of Tomb Raider content in the entire Survivor Trilogy run. A dense love letter to the franchise's history packed into a Croft Manor exploration experience. Among its many buried details is the Golden Rose in the Secret Crypt, which operates on two completely separate levels depending on what you know. Within the Survivor Trilogy canon, the Golden Rose is a reference to Lara's grandmother Rose, a family heirloom with personal emotional significance to the story Blood Ties is telling. For players who know only the rebooted games, it's a touching character detail. And for players who know the original core design games, the Golden Rose is a clear reference to the Golden Rose Secrets, a specific collectible category that appeared across the classic titles, one of the most distinctive recurring elements of the secret hunting that defined that era of the franchise. The Survivor Trilogy player sees a meaningful family artifact. The classic games fan sees a franchise continuity reference spanning decades. Crystal Dynamics built one prop that functions simultaneously as character storytelling and as franchise archaeology, and neither reading interferes with the other. That is a great tactful design, and Blood Ties DLC is full of stuff like this. Rise of the Tomb Raider's lead writer was Rhianna Pratchett, daughter of Terry Pratchett, the beloved British fantasy author who passed away in March 2015 while the game was in development. Rihanna embedded a tribute to her father in one of Lara Croft's audio journals. The journal describes the night of Lara's birth in a specific and personal way. Her father writes, "Before I even held you, I almost lost you, Lara. Yet you fought back, determined to live, breathe, ball your tiny fists, and scream the hospital down. It was the best noise I ever heard. When I went home that snowy night, I cooked myself a steak. Then I drank half a bottle of whiskey, tried to make snowshoes out of tennis rackets, and fell asleep with the cat. I was so damn happy." Oof. The specificity of those details, the steak, the whiskey, the tennis racket, snowshoes, and the cat, has the texture of something remembered rather than invented. I mean, stop cutting onions, man. So whether or not this passage is autobiographical, whether or not these are real details from the night Rihanna Pratchett was born, is something only she knows. What's clear is that she wrote this entry for a game about a daughter carrying her father's legacy, set against the backdrop of a daughter learning the truth about her father's life's work, while she herself was navigating the loss of her own father. The emotional weight of that context sits behind every word of that journal entry. It is, without question, the most moving thing on this entire list for me. The final shot of Shadow of the Tomb Raider, after everything is over and Lara has returned to Croft Manor, shows her in her study surrounded by the accumulated artifacts of her adventures. The camera settles on a child's drawing, Lara with her parents and a T-Rex standing next to a pyramid. Lara drew this as a kid. The T-Rex is a direct callback to the Lost Valley in the original 1996 game, the franchise's single most iconic enemy encounter. The moment that defined what it meant to meet something unexpected and enormous in these games. The pyramid connects to the same game, to Lara's first adventure, to where the whole story started. Ending the Survivor trilogy on this image, a child's drawing of two of Tomb Raider 1's most distinctive elements, is one of the most structurally elegant decisions Eidos Montreal made with the Shadow of the Tomb Raider. The Survivor trilogy spent 3 games asking and answering questions about Lara's identity, her origins, her relationship to her family's legacy, and what she has become through everything she has survived. And at the end of it all, in the study of a woman who has prevented the Maya apocalypse, faced the organization that killed her father, and became something the character in 2013 could never have imagined, there's a drawing she made as a child. Beautiful. The official Tomb Raider website describes the drawing as symbolic of Lara's evolution into a Tomb Raider over the course of the trilogy. But I think it's more than that. It's the rebooted franchise acknowledging, in the final frames of its final chapter, where everything actually came from. However different the Survivor trilogy was from the core design games, however much it reimagined the character, the tone in the world, the answer to where Lara Croft's story originates is the same in every timeline. A call of adventure, going after one's imagination, no matter the fear, the monster, or the place. Lara Croft and the Temple of Osiris is a spin-off rather than a mainline Tomb Raider title, but Lara Croft is absolutely in it, and the Easter egg inside it is too good to leave off this list on a technicality. If you find your way to the floor of the Pyramid of Osiris during the game, you will find the skeletal remains of Nathan Drake, protagonist of the Uncharted series and the closest thing to a direct industry competitor Lara Croft has in the gaming landscape. Nate is lying there dead. Yikes, he didn't make it. I guess the Lara vs Nate debate is settled then. Just kidding. So he presumably tried to navigate the same pyramid Lara is currently working through, found it somewhat beyond his capabilities, and his skeleton is the evidence of that. The Tomb Raider and Uncharted franchises have been in conversation with each other since Uncharted launched in 2007. Critics have endlessly compared them. Players have debated which is better, which came first in influence, whether Drake owes a debt to Croft or whether the two series developed independently. The Nathan Drake skeleton in a Lara Croft game is the Tomb Raider franchise's response to all of that debate. Not aggressive, not mean-spirited, but perfectly confident. He was there. He didn't survive. But she did. The Tomb Raider Horizons article signs off on this one with "Better luck next time, Nate," which is exactly the right energy. Lara wins this particular archaeological competition by default. And we got one final fact for you. And it's that the 2001 Lara Croft Tomb Raider film has a scene at an auction house where Lara encounters rival treasure hunter Alex West. He tries to smooth things over, asking why they always need to fight. Her response is immediate and specific. "You stole my prayer wheels." For audiences who never played the games, this is just a bit of character texture. A piece of backstory that tells you these two have history and that the history involves a theft of something specific. It lands fine. It does the job of establishing their dynamic. For fans of the classic games, the prayer wheels are one of the most memorable collectible items from Tomb Raider 2, distributed across the game's early Tibetan levels. They're a specific enough object that their mention in the film feels like a deliberate reference rather than a generic treasure placeholder. Tomb Raider Horizons article calls Tomb Raider 2 its all-time favorite Tomb Raider game and states plainly that if the prayer wheel is not a direct nod to it, the writer will be damned. That is the level of confidence with which longtime fans receive this line, and it's warranted. The prayer wheel reference in the Angelina Jolie film is the franchise reaching across media to acknowledge its own history for the fans who know where to look. So that's the full tour, guys. There will be new games of our beloved character Lara Croft, the legendary Tomb Raider, and we will be here covering all of them for you guys. The Tomb Raider franchise is a gift that keeps on giving, and we're all for it. The one thing Tomb Raider does not lack is content and layers, and that's why we're here to figure out the best facts from the content and to peel each layer as we figure out what to tell you guys in our videos. So that's it for today, and if you're still awake, I suggest you watch our video of 1 hour of Uncharted 4 facts to fall asleep to that's on your screen right now. Click it and I'll see you there. I'm Adam with Syrric, and once again, thanks for watching.